Good morning, Sint Maarten. What's up? July 3rd, 2023, episode 84. Today's going to be a very, very interesting show because we're going to touch some things that some people don't like to touch, but we need to talk about. And one of those things was this interesting article that appeared in the papers. I believe it was last week. But everybody just blew over it. Nobody really paid attention to what it really was. I picked up on the article first in Dossier Koningsrijk, and when I spoke to some people, they said that's impossible, that such a statement could have been made because it was never discussed in Parliament. Now, what is this statement? A statement was when State Secretary Van Huffelen stated to the First Chamber, to be specific, to the member of the First Chamber, Dietrich, of D66, that the three prime ministers of Curaçao, Aruba, and Sint Maarten do not believe that there's any room for same-sex marriages in the country. Now, again, for me, it's not about the marriages right now. For me, it's about what does the Constitution say? What are the treaties that we signed up for? And how do we deal with this in our country? These are one of these sorts of discussions, like independence, that you would want to talk to the public about. You'd want to hear the public on this. You'd want to hear the churches. You'd want to hear the LGBT groups. You want to hear the public in general. Is it a social issue? Is it a moral issue? Is it a religious issue? Is it an issue of equal rights? Again, it is something that needs to be discussed. The Prime Minister took it upon herself. The Prime Minister of Sint Maarten, I'm talking about. I ain't addressing Aruba and Curaçao. That's for them to deal with. Because both of them have been in courts. Curaçao lost the case in the appellate court. So did Aruba. Aruba immediately opened the door that gay couples that are married in the Netherlands can register as such in Aruba. In Curaçao, that's not possible. In Sint Maarten, that's not possible. So the discussion was because in the Netherlands, they said, but we signed on to a treaty and so did those autonomous island countries. So in the kingdom, the law should be equal, but it is not. Van Huffelen rightfully states, listen, they're autonomous countries. If they don't live up to the treaties they signed to, and that becomes an issue down the road for the Netherlands, they will step in. Make no mistake with that. Article 43, they will step in. The same way they had to step in when things went wrong with human rights in the prison. Because at the end of the day, the European Covenant gives room for countries that do not believe in same-sex marriage. They do that. That is there. The problem is we sign on to a treaty not realizing that our Constitution is in breach with it, which means that treaty trumps our Constitution. So our Constitution can say a marriage is between a man and a woman doesn't make that law. That's the problem. That happened in Curaçao already. They lost. It gone to the Supreme Court now. The judges said, listen, seeing the ticklish nature of this law, of this case, of this verdict, we will not implement the verdict. We will await the constitutional decision from the Supreme Court on this matter, which will take a few years. But that's why I brought it up 2 weeks ago. Marriage equality. Talk about it. Discuss it. See where we go as country. Wherever we go, democracy will rule. Democracy will decide. Not a handful. And definitely not just a prime minister making a call. We're not even talking to Parliament. The legislators of the country. The highest legislative body of the country. You see, these are the type of things that we have to be extremely careful with in a democracy. Because before you know it, you're in a dictatorship. where one person or two people or three people decide for the country when the country hasn't even given it any real thought yet. So I said, I think it's something to look at carefully and something to discuss, and that's why I'm opening my show with it. I'm going to discuss it a little lower down yet in the show today, so that you all understand a little bit of what's really at stake and what this truly means. But the way it went is not the way it should have gone, and I'm a little surprised that our Prime Minister answered that way, and that was purely because of political pressure. Not because she wanted to, but because of political pressure. That's unfortunate, because that's not the country I want to live in. We have seen how fraud was sanctioned by this government because of political pressure. So let's move on. I have a strong feeling that our Minister of Theatre is on a downhill roller coaster ride, and he's going to crash. First, he signs off on an MOU in Aruba that has absolutely no value, in my opinion, regarding sharing agricultural information, which we don't even have. The people that have agricultural information are people like Denisha Wyatt, or people like Ras Bushman, Ashola, Jocelyn. They have information. Not the country, not the government. So where you're going signing MOU that you are going to be exchanging information. You don't even have $1 on the budget to help sustain agriculture. But you're going to sign this, what, to fill a half a page in a newspaper? It has absolutely no value. That's my problem. Now, to make matters worse, the minister comes out then and says, the plane, Boston is coming, Delta flying in. To only a day later or 2 days later, after Delta says, this is craziness. We never discussed this. We don't even have our winter schedule for 2024 ready. But the Minister of Sint Maarten says the Delta coming. Are we going crazy? I mean, nobody checks a press release that says that type of nonsense, that says something about the cabinet itself, that says something about what's happening in the government. Nobody checking nobody, everybody doing what they gotta do, election coming. This is how you embarrass your country. You know? No, let me leave it, because I don't want to waste time on stupidity, because that's what it was. Stupidity that embarrassed the country. And then come back and say, oh, we made a mistake. No, you didn't make a mistake. You did not make a mistake. But that's for a different show. I didn't enjoy the clip, though, from the Kenyan president when he was exchanging some thoughts with the French president, Macron, of France, regarding the powers of the world, and basically told him that nor the World Bank nor the IMF should be used to help countries in need, because simply put, the colonizers are the ones deciding in the World Bank and the IMF what's going to happen to those that's supposed to get help. I found it an interesting analogy, but what I found more interesting was the solution that he brought when he said, let's create a new bank. Let's create a bank where every country in the world pays a transaction tax. And that money will be placed in this bank. And everybody that is part of paying the transaction tax will be represented in that bank. So that when decisions are taken, they're not taken from a position of power, but from a position of equality. You hear that word? Equality. The one that I have been discussing with you, that we always get confronted with. We might be equal humans, but we're not equal in equity. And because we're not equal in equity, which is money and assets and those type of things, we don't decide what happens in our own country. And that's what the African nations have now been realizing, that they are still being exploited because they pay very high rents on their loans that they have from mother country France. That's why the Chinese became so dangerous when they moved in there and started offering loans at lower rates, and eventually they knew the French, the Africans couldn't pay, so they owned their airports, their harbors, etc., etc. That's what's really happening. But again, this is what we call geopolitics, and I don't want to go there right now because I don't think the show can hold it. Too many thoughts, too many things to discuss. But again, this bank that they're talking about is a bank that should be set up to deal with primarily climate change. And I say this, and that's why I brought it into my story today, because this word climate change, we're going to talk about it a little bit today. We're going to talk what it means for country Sint Maarten. We're going to talk what it means with the visit of Van Huffelen, because a lot of people didn't realize what that visit really entailed. Sure, emancipation was a part of it. It wasn't about emancipation for her. She was on 3 islands on the same day for emancipation. But she was here, and she spent more time visiting GB than she spent at emancipation. And the question is why? And we're going to talk about that. So, again, we got to understand what's really happening in the world. Because Sint Maarten is a little dot someplace in the Caribbean Sea. And while we call that home, other people just call that flyover. The World Bank has allocated $19.5 million to ensure that the projects that were already budgeted but not completed, like the schools, like the gym, the Sundial gym, for example, increasing the resiliency of the utility services, that's making sure everything is on the ground. I think it's a lot of kilometers they wanted to put on the ground, which is primarily the secondary power, because primary power, high tension, is on the ground already. They wanted to ensure that housing and public buildings and reconstruction is finalized, and I like the one from housing because we're going to get to that one later. Emergency measures for disaster relief and more. So that's what this money is for. It's going to supplement the ERP1. That was the Emergency Relief Program. That was the first one. As the hurricane came out, that was the one that came out. And I think we are now up to 119 million. Let's say about 120 million. Approximately 25% of all the monies given from the trust fund have been put in that. And we know the situation of the schools. They are still building. We have a lot of schools that are basically still not even starting, like the Marie Laurent School that didn't even start. Charles Leopold Bell didn't even start. A lot of homes. We just had a very sad story that I want to address just now from an elderly couple that's for 6 years waiting to go into their home. And the problem is not the couple. The problem is the process. And we got to discuss that because it's unfortunate that this thing has to even reach a newspaper now. It has been by the ombudsman, has been all over. But when we look at what's happening, and you see them give another $20 million, and they say, yeah, that's to fill the financial gaps. That means somebody failed someplace. Because all these things were calculated. They had a steering committee. You remember those people? It was a steering committee. Everything was checked. World Bank brought in professionals. They got, what, $80 million to manage the trust fund with all their expertise. They flew in millions of consultants, paid them millions of dollars. And you still got shortfalls? Who covering who? The government covering themselves or the World Bank covering themselves? Somebody covering themselves because they needed 20 million more to do what they had to do already with the money they got. But like I said, a lot of things going on. Sundial School, the gym, wide open, everybody seen. Upstairs, every time it rains, you can't use it. There's still no early warning system on this island. There are no sirens, nothing. All of these things had to be done already. Years now. The whole disaster management plan that the VGNI came in and did up to today, a lot is not where it should be. And yes, the Prime Minister can walk around and say, oh boy, the NRPB doing a great job, and oh, we're going to open the offices of the World Bank. It's all a bunch of hogwash. The people of this country still don't have enough homes to live in. Still got children in all kind of different areas in school because schools ain't ready. Hurricane was 6 years ago on September 6th, people. 6 years ago. And we can't get it done. I see buildings building in Sint Maarten. And within 6 months, they're done. The hospital can't get done. Is it because those that are building commercially know how to do it with the money and the money ain't free? Versus those that get in free money and can't finish the work? You see, because that's the problem here. That's the main issue here today. We put in a bunch of money into it, but we ain't getting the end product. I was happy to see that the central bank woke up. And now they jump on the bandwagon from the CFT, where the current healthcare system isn't sustainable. Now, you see, these are things that make me say, It is only a few days ago that there were discussions between all four partners, and we spoke of healthcare, and healthcare would be good, and healthcare would be this. And here comes the central bank now, a week later, 4 days later, and says, yeah, but it is not self-sustainable because of what's happening. We got to understand that government's income is dropping, but healthcare is starting to cost more. So the ratio of healthcare versus the GDP of the country is way too high. And that means it's not sustainable anymore. Particularly in Curacao, it's a major problem. But Sint Maarten, with 8-9% peddling coming up of their GDP in healthcare, is the same problem. Curacao is just a little further. And you see what's happening in Curacao now. They told them, well, the doctors, they also fall in the same category of the top income earners tagged to the salary of the Prime Minister. Now in Curacao, the neurologists them said, well, you know what, you all figure it out, we gone. We don't need to work here. We can make a better living elsewhere. So they're leaving. And with all these big registrations that works in Curacao, because Sint Maarten, at least our minister saw an opportunity to make a change that we don't need to use only the big registered doctors and nurses, but we can use qualified doctors and nurses from the regions or internationally. They come here, their papers are checked. If they're in order, they can practice in this country. I think that was a great move by the Minister of VSA. Kudos to him. Let's hope that they don't try to block it from every angle when this has to happen. But again, let's see what this means moving forward, that the central bank is telling us that our healthcare is not sustainable. The CFT is saying the healthcare is not sustainable. And my problem with that is, are they going to set measures on these things by who they're going to put at the top? Because that's one of the things that nobody's paying attention to, but I am getting concerned when I see what's happening. Our country, both sides, Dutch and French, were plunged into mourning last week with the passing, the unexpected passing of a visionary, I want to call him, the late Albert Scatter Fleming. Albert was in the days of Claude, Dr. Petit and all them, Ely Fleming, the golden years of Sint Maarten. I think Valerie Damagase said it well. He had a vision for his country. He knew what his people needed. The same you can say of Claude. Like him or not, same with Albert, like him or not, they knew what they wanted and they knew how to have their people at least get part of the pie. Not saying everything was good and everything was kosher, because that'd be unfair of me to do. But at least I'll say this. If we had a few more of them, we wouldn't be in this disaster we are today. That much I will say. But to the family of Albert, to the friends of Albert, to the supporters of the former mayor, I say, please accept my condolences of me and my family and my party. We have lost a great man, a great visionary man, a man that made Sint Maarten, Sint Maarten. And I hope that when the funeral is held, I understood it's going to be on Friday, unfortunately I'll be off island, that we attend and show respect to a man that made Dutch and French side what it is today. So rest softly, sir. You were a legend and you have left a legacy that we can continue to build on. Now let's move on to some other stuff. I realized that there's another political party, I think it was the USP, that has also realized the damage the government is now doing when it comes to empowering its own people. And I'm going to start talking about this empowerment because it just keeps happening. Last week, another one. Now the chief commercial officer at the airport is a hotelier. I mean, look, I have nothing against nobody. But if you want to talk about hoteliers, to put them there, you tell me we have nobody? We have nobody in Sint Maarten that can do this? We have people that are in the industry here for 20, 30 years. And they couldn't do it. But you have to work in Switzerland or in France or in the Marriotts to be a commercial officer. What happened? The hotels in Sint Maarten are not good enough. See, this is my problem. There are enough people that have a study that can do this. They just don't come back because they ain't gonna get a job anyway. They don't have the helicopter view. They don't have the strategic thinking. They gotta come from a little small island where we need big boys. But let me put it straightforward. Another top position given to a foreigner. Well done. Well done, government. Because you all cannot and should not ever use the word empowerment. You all go and throw flowers in the sea with you're emancipating the people of Sint Maarten. No, you're colonizing them. You all have become the colonizers of the 21st century. You all don't even understand what you're doing. You're destroying your own people. That's what you're doing. You put them second class. And you keep bringing in people and put them on top of us. And then you say, don't worry, man. I'm going to give you a counterpart contract. And 5 years from now is your turn. You really believe that stupidity? That BS? There were big campaign things up last time. You are qualified. Country for sale. What about seats for sale? What about board seats for sale? What about CFO slots for sale? CEO slots for sale? What about that? Because I'm sick and tired of listening to your lies. But I'm going to expose you all politically, like I told you all. And whenever I'm ready, you know where to find me. Because I ain't going no place. I ain't running from all you, and I ain't afraid of none of you. You can come as a whole pack, but I don't really care. You know, when I look at democracy, I understand that we sometimes don't understand what we have. I was amused when somebody called me and said, but you ain't hear what happened? I said, no. I spend my weekends with my family, especially my grands. I love to spend time with them. And I didn't hear anything. So I got this call Sunday night. So the first thing that went through my mind was, they must have defeat Silveira as leader of the NA. Because that was the expectation that there was going to be a challenge. They said, well, they smell a rat. So what they do, they appoint the board and the leader and deputy leader by acclamation. No vote, no nothing. I said, well, that's strange. Because they said they were going to have a Congress. The Congress, you vote. Why would you not vote? The only reason you wouldn't vote is if there were no counter candidates or no counter slate. But even so, you still vote by asking the sitting people if they agree with it. And they will say yay or nay. But they didn't do that. They just told them what going to happen. Now, when these things start to happen, you just got to smell. They got to smell the coffee. Because they have now shown their ugly face. They will do what they have to do to stay in control at all costs. Not even the baker. The baker was stripped of his deputy leadership. He didn't even know it. He didn't even know it happened. He was sitting there and then he heard he wasn't the deputy leader anymore. He didn't know what was going on. And so there were other people, because the stories I got them from them. Not from me, because I didn't go. But again, it's gearing up. The paper of today says, and I want to quote it because I'm going there just now. It was, let me look for it. I can't put my hand on it right now here fast, but I should be able to find it. Malen. It's time for me to step forward to strengthen the NA. On Saturday, he launched his campaign. His father said he can pass on the baton to his son, which is an honorable thing. If there's one man that I know politically worked very hard, was Undi. I'll give him that. Every election, Undi would even tell you what numbers your party could get, because he had a very good political insight. But a good campaign is not necessarily a good candidate. But you know what? I have respect for the good gentleman and his father. I will await the arena to open, and we will see then what happens. But I want to congratulate him for a great show on Saturday. The problem was the show on Saturday was better than the show on Sunday. And that's what led to a lot of these things. When you see the constellation of the board, you will understand who the power players are. You'll understand who pushing for what in the NA. And that's a great thing, because I hope we have a formidable competitor this election. Because all over the place, things look like they're falling asunder for some parties. But we need to have parties at the polls so that at least the people have a choice to vote. And then I want to talk about the World Bank, because I saw the Daily Herald ran an editorial about the World Bank opening an office here and how great this is for Sint Maarten, and that the function is nice. But what's so great? What's so great in it? The people that come here ain't paying no taxes. They get in diplomatic status, they could do all kind of things because they're above the law. I don't understand. Are they bringing money to our country? No, they are not. The monies that still have to be administered are monies that the Dutch gave the World Bank that they carry on an American bank. It's not in our banks. It's not even in our banks. It's not in the central bank. It's by their banks in Washington. So what are you bringing? What was wrong with Haiti? What was wrong with Jamaica? What was wrong with Guyana that you needed a fourth office in the Caribbean? See, that's what you need to explain me. Because the World Bank is in here throwing out billions in the Caribbean and they need 4 offices. So when that explanation is given properly. You all want to go and wave flags then? You go ahead. I ain't waving none. For my part, they can pack up and go home. Because they treat us as a third world country. They believe that we know nothing. They treat our government as a set of puppets that they are. Because they accept whatever they tell them. There's no discussion. You do as we tell you, or we take the money and go. Money that's not theirs. But they tell you that. Look at the landfill. When Huffelen came down here, run them out about the landfill. But nobody listened to the key word she said. Renewable energy. That is the word that a lot of people missed in this whole discussion. GB, landfill. Renewable energy. Waste to energy. Those were her words and Oral Gibbs, not mine. Her words. But we're going to come to that just now. Because you all need to learn to understand what's truly happening. And not just take things for face value because they were said. Oral did a great interview. And he tried a few times to corner her. But kudos to the State Secretary Van Huffelen. She is a seasoned politician. She knew how to get her message out to those that needed to understand her message. Because half of us still don't understand what she said. She spoke nice, but again, she didn't give us any thumbs up when it comes to GB, when it comes to landfill, when it comes to renewable energy. What she said is that we are not ready for it. That's what she said. And that's the message you need to take with you. But again, when we look at this whole trust fund, we're 6 years further nearly, 3 governments further, and we still can't finish the job. A job that had to be finished within 7 years is now going to take 9 years already. I still don't understand the reason for the office. But like I said, we live in a digitalized world. Everything is on the tip of your finger. Press the button and you have the answers, you have the discussions, you have Teams meetings, you have Zoom. Why do you need an office here? You're not doing the banking here. So why do you need it? I need to understand it better. That it's a pride, and pride for whom? Pride for who? I don't understand it. But again, maybe I'm too short-sighted in this one. Maybe I don't like him too much. So I don't see the positive in it. I'll be honest with that. Let me congratulate the Sea Rescue who attended the World Maritime Rescue Congress in Rotterdam. I'm happy. You see, now that they have their boat back, now they can start doing their thing, they're becoming active again. I'm very happy for that. And I can't say I'm not a happy camper when I saw the King apologize on Saturday. I was extremely happy because it should have happened already. But the King thought, I'm going to call for an interview, for a review of the House of Orange's behavior or role during that period. I want to believe that the King already knew that the study was ongoing. And when that study came out, that 480 pages study came out, and the Minister of Kingdom Affairs, Internal Affairs, Interior Affairs, not internal, Interior Affairs, sent her letter to the second chamber, the King had no more alternative but to apologize. Because no matter what research he does, it could not come back different to what was found. And what was found is that the House of Orange was in the midst of the slave trade. They own 3%, for God's sakes, of the company. They got 600 million into his money off of the slave trade. So again, I'm happy that he apologized. Now let's start this healing process that we're all talking about, and the restructuring of the country's economy, its education, its healthcare, and any other ills that came because of the way we were treated after slavery. Because what happened during slavery, we know. Now we need to deal with what happened after the slavery and what's happening today. And those are the things that we need to fix. So reparations, yes, but reparations to the country, because those that really suffered aren't with us anymore. And that's a discussion a lot of people are going to want to have. That's not one I'm going to have at all. I want to discuss how we're going to do it and fix this country. Van Huffelen lays it out for Sint Maarten and Oral Gibbs. There was a great interview with the State Secretary, and I was happy she touched the landfill, and clearly she believes that the World Bank stopped the fires on the landfill. Unfortunately, that's not true. But at least she recognized that the garbage keeps coming while nothing is happening, and renewable energy, unfortunately, isn't in the planning for a better climate change future. The small islands aren't getting the help as they need for the Sustainable Development Goals for 2013, because they're not geared up enough towards solar energy and wind energy. Now, I must say, Oral Gibbs did a great job when it came to talking about renewable energy. And I was happy to hear that the State Secretary stated that the government, listen, give it away. You hear what I said? The government is working on waste energy. Now, mind you, because this is interesting for you all to know, it is this same sitting government, this one right here, that in 2017 approved the waste to energy. It was the then deputizing Prime Minister, I believe, Mr. Bosman, Emmanuel Fuvromi, Richard Gibson Fuvrom, Sylvaria Jacobs for education. Those were the people that were involved with this. It was passed, you know. It was passed in December 2017, vetted by HBN law. And the governor held on to it because he said, there's a new government coming. I want them to also embrace it. That didn't happen. 10 months later, it was gone. This government has been in power now for over 42 months nearly. And nothing tangible has happened with the landfill. Nothing. But the State Secretary said, no, don't worry, government, we're going to waste the energy. Now, waste the energy is a form of alternative energy. It's not a renewable energy. It's an alternative energy. There's a difference in there. A renewable energy is when you're using things like solar or wind, biomass, those type of things, wave actions. You take that energy and you put it into a different energy. That's the aspect, because most of those things are free. Now, how would I say this? The State Secretary said garbage keeps coming, because now we're dealing with 2 landfills, not one. We have the old landfill and we have the Irma landfill. Now, we all know who created the Irma landfill. But I'll talk about that later, because I want specifically here in a discussion I had with the NRBB. They invited me to have a discussion on waste, and we're going to talk about that later. But Sint Maarten has borrowed also a lot of money from the Dutch over the years, and the restructuring of the loan debts was discussed so that it will help the country to continue to grow. The Corona loans were discussed, which was also a large amount of money, about 300 million. The IMF believes that the country can handle the debt ratio as it presently has, and I was happy to hear that. At least we know we can pay back our loans. That's what I gathered out of it. Besides the restructuring of the of the country, the necessary investments and reforms must take place to ensure that the government is restructured properly and that people must pay their taxes. So there are a few things that I said there. There's going to be a much more aggressive tax collection. People are not paying their taxes are going to be tackled so they can pay it, and I wholeheartedly support that. They're also going to restructure the taxes where they're going to simplify the taxes, look at, I hope, drop the profit tax to about 10%, 12%, structure the income tax that your wage tax, that your wage tax is basically your income tax, and also get rid of the turnover tax and bring a import duty tax. That way, the country will make much more money than it's making right now, and we will be able to get rid of some of those hefty loans we have. I listened to the state secretary, and I was trying to gather if she was going to make it clear if the loans, especially the Corona loans, if they were going to be turned over into grants for the execution of, for example, educational projects, health projects, judicial projects, but she didn't go that far. I know in Curacao there's a discussion ongoing to use monies that they owe to the Dutch in loans to do educational reform and restructuring so that the government doesn't have to find that money. Instead of paying back the loans, they can use that money to do that. So I was looking for that. I was hoping she would have come out with it and say it publicly, but she did not. But okay, it's their money, so I ain't going there. But she also said, listen, Sint Maarten needs to understand that the game that we play, the political game that we play, also has consequences. Just like how the Dutch suffer consequences from the European Union when they play political games with, for example, the carbon dioxide that goes up in the air. Holland is way, way, way over their limits because of all the farmers they have and the fertilizers that they use. Because of these type of things, she said Sint Maarten shouldn't believe that it can do what it wants when it wants. She said she's a very understanding person, but if she gotta get tough, she gonna get tough. But clearly, she didn't say that she was a Knops, and I was happy to hear that one. You know, I was really happy to hear that she wasn't going down there, and this government isn't going to be as ruthless as the previous government in the Knops era. That, you know, no matter what we said or what we tried, he was going to do what he had to do as a military man, and it cost him his state secretaryship, his ministership that he was supposed to get, and now he's not even in parliament anymore. He's not in the second chamber anymore. But again, she also said that all the islands have their own style, their own type of way of doing things. Their people are all different. And that is something that the Dutch is working very hard on, to understand that, because it is not a one-size-fits-all. We have too many different things going on. And the message from the Dutch to all the islands is in reality that the Dutch people are waking up to what really happened during the slavery period and are willing to acknowledge our heroes. like in Curacao, Tula, in Sint Maarten, Wantitilokay and them, who resisted slavery and had the uprisings, and also fund projects that will hopefully solve the slavery past and its consequences of especially racism, and also the serious issues of the past. And in the serious issues of the past, it can be from health to assets, whatever it was. It is something they're going to be looking at and dealing with. The State Secretary said on Saturday she was going out for Emancipation Day on the boardwalk and hoped to have chatted with a lot of people about how they see things and what they think of what's happening and how it's happening when it comes to the slavery past and the way that should go. She also touched on the reparations and the CARICOM plans. And this has been discussed in the Netherlands, and they will assist to help develop the countries, but they're not going to be paying people reparations. They're not going to do that. They're making that abundantly clear from now. And I can understand that, because it's going to be difficult. Who do you give it to? Who do you give the money to? To which cousin suffered more? Who exactly? And this is going to be a problem, because I know there are people counting themselves rich already on reparations that are not going to come. So I think we got to be very carefully with it. But I want that we understand that we can eradicate a lot of the racism we have now. We can foster equality the way it should be. Not only equality as a people, but also equality based on assets. That we are still one. Not because you got 18 million and I got 50,000 means we're not equal. Not because you have a 500 billion euro budget every year and I got a 450 million guilder budget every year. We are not equal. We are still equal partners. We might not have the same assets, but we are still equal. And that equality is something that when we start to respect each other for what we are and who we are, then hopefully we can eradicate that ugly, ugly thing called racism. Because we are all God's children. Not some of us, all of us. And all of us were created equally. The Netherlands wants to develop the school system, the healthcare system, the hospital, a good economy, create a livable environment that is crime-free, eradicate racism, and hopefully they can resolve the poverty issue. And that poverty issue is a different story altogether. Because the poverty system, or the poverty issue in Sint Maarten, over 70% of Sint Maarten lives in poverty, if we like it or not. Those are now facts. 2,500 guilders, give and take, is a livable wage. Over 70% of the wage earners earn 3,000 guilders or less. So they are living in a poverty state. We're gonna have to accept these things if we really want to move forward the right way. We need to put a social system in place. The government needs to do this. And that way, we can ensure that the assistance we need to get to certain people can be given. The Dutch made 200 million euros available to the 3 islands to start helping us moving forward. Things of slavery past or whatever. There is money there. Let's make sure we have our ducks lined up and we tackle what needs to be tackled now. Let us not wait until it's too late and the money gone and all that. And hopefully, the entrepreneurial funds at the World Bank, they can ease up on those ludicrous criteria they have so that people can borrow the money. $35 million is sitting there unused. $35 million. That's crazy. But remember, it is the small and middle-sized businesses that are the backbone of every economy, including the one in Sint Maarten. But if we don't build that one back up, that was severely destroyed after Irma and then the pandemic, our economy will never boom. It will never become stable because you'll have a few big players that try to regulate everything in your country. Now the ERP one, you all could remember that I was talking about that a little earlier. What is it really? And the reason I bring it up is because of this elderly couple. I was ashamed. That's the best word I can use. I was ashamed when I read that article in the newspaper. And the reason I was ashamed, I know of the case. I know of the case. I've spoken to the people before. I've spoken to the trust fund about it before. And my thing is this. 6 years, these people's home was destroyed. They brought in a contractor, gave the contractor a lot of money to fix homes and fix some shelters. Things went wrong with the contractor. Contracts were taken from the contractor. And contractors in courts right now, I believe he said, with the NRPB, and he is going to win, and he's going to get his money. When you get him money, don't forget to come and pay for the container we owe a lot of money for. And a second contractor was brought in. And that contractor subcontracted the work to a third contractor. While all this going on, the people are put in Midtown Hotel. About 2-3 years ago, a bailiff reached and told them, here are your keys, your house is done. Roof still leaking, windows and doors not pinned in correctly, no bathroom, no kitchen, but your house is ready. Now, again, I understand a lot of things. You're not talking about young people, you're talking about elderly people. The electricity was left in shambles because the electrician was not paid, so he stopped the job. So everything is open, exposed. Plumbing finished. So you might not even have running water in the house. And I am asking myself, who in their right mind can say the house is finished? Nobody can. Nobody can say the house is done. These are local people. I don't know what the fight is, but clearly, because the lady decided to stand her ground, they gone ballistic on this lady and her husband. The lady had a fall and walks very difficult. You cannot expect that you can come and make a statement and you say the house is finished while the house is not inhabitable. And it was the World Bank, I think it was, NRPB, I think it was, they said, when we do something, we do it better than it was before. We build back better. We build back with more resilience. I think they even took $14 million and went share it in Santo Domingo and other places because they moved people from the landfill. But they can't fix a toilet and they can't fix a kitchen. No, that's not good. That's not allowed. Because according to the Prime Minister, we didn't understand. We didn't have a helicopter view. We didn't think strategically that the ERP1 was strictly for roof, window, and door. Tanti, stop talking. Let me not use obscene language on the podcast. Stop talking stupidness. Because you know you all fix bathrooms and kitchens for other people. Bedrooms and so for other people. So please, don't do this. You know I have a hatred when people take advantage of seniors, of handicaps, of the less fortunate, and then come and talk stupidity. Now, I have such a dislike for that. But I know this is your style. Because you got the power now. So you're going to do what you got to do. But you're going to keep that power for long enough. That you can put in your pipe and smoke. But that you are willing to allow seniors to suffer tells me and should tell the public of St. Maarten the type of government you all are all about. Because in the same breath, the same Prime Minister says, oh yeah, but we have done it for some others. We have gone a little further than just windows, doors, and roofs. This is crazy. Here you have a family 6 years awaiting to get into their house. And you will come and say that in a press conference? In your press briefings on Wednesday? And you all don't feel the need to apologize to these people in the public of St. Maarten? You know who the contractor was that finished it, right? If you don't know, ask your counsel. They'll explain you who. Because if this is the game you're going to play, I am going to call names. This got to stop. In good or in bad. In good or in bad, it's going to stop though. Because this is going too far. Y'all going to send a bailiff to give the people their keys and tell them the house done. Windows ain't good, doors ain't good, roof ain't good, no kitchen, no toilet. The people had paid a contractor to do that. Additionally, they paid him. Contractor take off with money and everything, so you all wash your hands. You all wash your hands and say, oh, but it wasn't we. She paid a contractor, and there are claims in courts with that contractor. But as a responsible government that takes care of their people and can give away $14 million and send money to Santo Domingo for people that are using and squatting on land from government, you can't help somebody living in St. Peter's and Pomseret Road. You can't help them. But you all got a serious problem. You all have a serious problem. Because you're not for the people. You're not empowering them. You're not emancipating them. You're putting them in bondage. That's what you're doing. That's what you're doing. And they dress up on Saturday, go throwing flowers in the sea. Please, man, please, don't do these things. Don't be that kind of hypocrite. You know, there comes a time when we really have to ask the question, but World Bank, what are your criteria? For whom are they? Who decides who gets extra and who doesn't? Because it clearly is not a blanket statement. It is some people get and some people don't get. I don't understand that. Because I can understand with government, friends and family. That's a common thing that is due. And then when others do it, oh, it's nepotism, oh, country for sale, oh, this, oh, that. When they do it, hey, that's the norm. We can do fraud with tenders. That's okay, that's the norm. When others do it, it's a crime. But every dog got day. Every hog got Saturday. Don't worry. But again, what do we do with a person? What do we do with the old lady? What do we do with a husband? So they continue living in the little casita they got in the back of their house? Because the World Bank / NRPB gave a contract to a con man? Huh? Who checked these people? Who checked them? Again, I believe in empowering our own. But if you know that person is a problem, why get in bed? This ain't the first run he has had with us, you know. If you all don't know who he be, remember all the oil we had on the pond? Container bust open suddenly. Oil was hidden in a container. Container was starting to move out of the harbor and move here, move there. Just do your research, people. You'll find out what's going on. My problem is this. We need to take care of our own. And yes, when you make a mistake, fix it. You don't have to justify your mistake. Fix the mistake and move on. But again, like I said, I just need to understand if other homes got kitchens and bathrooms repaired, and if yes, why not the home of the family in St. Peter's? Is it also fair to state that the safeguards of the NRPB/World Bank, where the contractor mismanaged the project and caused significant damage to the home in the sense of the unmovable furniture, electricity and plumbing and so, is the fault and responsibility of the World Bank/NRPB and not of the homeowner? And you cannot push that off on a contractor and say, well, go figure it out with the contractor. No, they didn't have a contract with the contractor. You all did. You all had that contract. And you all screwed it up. And now you're going to tell seniors, you all go figure it out. Here's your keys. We done with you. Why? Because they complained. Because they went there and said, I want to talk to somebody in charge. Because what's happening here is unfair. But who cares? Nobody seemed to care. Because we go in the press conference and we say the following. The criteria were roofs, doors, and windows. In some cases, they did do more to make the place habitable. But the intention with that fund was not for setting up the interior of homes. Setting up the interior? Since when is a goddamn kitchen and a bathroom and interior? Man, that's habitable. Or you got outhouses where you live. Stop this stupidness, Madam Prime Minister. Stop it. Sometimes I wonder how educated you are when you talk like this. And you make people feel shame. The report of the Ombudsman, entitled Home Repair, a Revelation to a Social Crisis. Did you all read it? Did you all understand what it said? Because clearly you have no concept of what you're talking about. Because if you had read that report, you wouldn't have spoken so. So run, go back, ask them for the report, read up on it, so Wednesday when you come there, you can apologize to the people. And tell them, don't worry, we're going to fix your house. We made a mistake. It takes a big person to do that. It takes a big person. But just do it. For God's sakes, do it. Because if you all would only follow some of the recommendations from the Ombudsman, a lot of the wrongs would be righted. You didn't follow it with the garbage collection. You didn't. You politically went and tried to fix it on the floor of Parliament by voting down the motions. And when the investigation is finished and doors have been kicked in and offices have been searched, you will then say, why didn't I listen to the recommendations? But that's for another show. I wonder, aloud, had the State Secretary known of this report, how she would have reacted. I was not privy that the interview was going to happen, so had I known that, I would have typed 2 questions to Oral Gibbs. One would have been of this home specifically, and the other one would have been, when is the takeover from GB coming? Let's move on. The Road Fund and Heavy Equipment Inspection Standards. Now, I read the article of MP Bryson, and you know, MP Bryson is one of these MPs that does work on changing laws where he believes it's needed. don't always agree with everything, but hey, like I said, at least he's working on amendments to laws and so. Now, he used the General Audit Chamber's report to state that the road fund is not being funded by the income of the road tax. So the law says the road tax should go to the road fund. And with that road fund, which is an independent entity, not a government operated entity, but an independent entity, where they would have, I would want to believe, a concession. They would have their own board, their own management, they do their own thing. They would be the one doing the road repairs, building new roads, putting road markings, putting road furniture like traffic signs and guardrails, all in collaboration with the respective entities of the police, the insurance, the Ministry of Romi, but they would be in charge. The road fund would be in charge. I noticed that the 100% was changed to 70%, and then they said, we'll take the car rental tax, and there was another one, let me just find it there fast. It was a car rental tax they were going to take, and another one. As soon as I find it, we will deal with it. Oh yeah, and the inspection fees. So right now, the government gets 100%. That's about 9 million, I believe it is, 10 million on road tax. They want to give 70% of that, which would be 7 million, and they would give the car rental tax and the inspection fees. If that's going to be 3 million, okay, I don't have a problem with that. But if it's not going to be 3 million, it's going to be less, then why do that? Why take away that money? And then to tell me, oh, it needs to pay for the administration. But who paying for it now? Who paying for it now? Who says that the road tax money is paying for that? It's just going into the regular budget of the government. And the difference is this. The government gets about 2.5 million guilders a year to fix roads, and 10 plus million is collected per year on road tax. So the government has been stealing from the people in the sense of not putting the money in the road fund so that roads can be properly done. Because that's what it's about. That's what this whole road fund was made up for. Not for government to have a pet project on the side. No. It was a hands-off something. This road fund derives from the original company named Agrisol. That is a company that was an NV that was set up 30 years plus ago, back in the 90s. Those days you had Highland Council member, I think she, that time MP Westcott was the head of finance for Sint Maarten, and she was involved, and Joseph Dollison was the head of public works, and he were involved. They were with that. It never materialized in the sense of the money was put in and it started to work. But that company was going to do a lot of things outside of the government of Sint Maarten, so that the political hand was off of it. That's what that was about. But again, my thing is this. The MP made another statement, and that one caught my attention. Oh, we need to raise the fees. We need to raise the inspection fees. So I smiled. I said, okay, let me see where you're going with this one. Yeah, because to do the heavy equipment, you know, that setup will cost some money, so we need to raise the fee. Now, the amount that the fee had to be raised was not really brought out. What I know is, right now we pay 37 gilder 50, $21 when we go and do the testing at the inspection center. How much the government gets, I don't know. I don't know how much they get out of that, because that's not clear to me. So I don't think they get half. I don't think they get half, maybe less. So for anybody who know it, just drop me a fast text on how much the government gets from that. Because the interesting part is this: how many big trucks, Mack trucks, garbage trucks, backhoes, loaders, bulldozers, because all of those things need to be inspected. Some cannot be inspected at the center because you don't bring a D8 to inspection. You go to the site and you inspect it. Those things work off property, they don't work on roads, so most of those things don't need even testing. It is the excavators, the backhoes, the trailer trucks that are on the road, the water truck, the septic trucks. Those are the type of things that we're talking about that need to be inspected. So the question was this: do we create a second inspection center? One that will handle the heavy equipment, but also cars. Because the heavy equipment, you have a handful of those Z, maybe 200, I don't know, 300, versus the 20,000 cars we have, plus rentals, etc., etc. So what I'm saying is this: if you are going to do an inspection, have a second inspection center built where we have 2 people doing inspections instead of 1 person alone or 1 company alone. Create a second inspection center so that people don't have to line up for hours. No, just create. We are empowering people, not enriching, empowering. Give a second inspection center life. We have the VIN numbers of cars that need to be checked. Put that maybe by that inspection center with the heavy equipment, but you don't need to raise the premiums. I don't agree with that, because that is only going to put more burden on the operators of the vehicles, the residents of the country. Rental cars, according to me, inspect every year. So in that sense, I'm saying that is offset in the rental fee, but not for the local cars, the M's and the P's, the taxis, the buses. You start to raise the fees, you're going to hurt those people too. I am saying the heavy equipment, they should be tested separately and they pay a different fee. That's it. The equipment doesn't cost you $1 million. So, I mean, I don't understand why we are making this thing, because all of this whole story was to reach to that point. We got to raise the inspection fees. No, we ain't got to raise them. No, we should not raise them. What we should do is create a second inspection center, and then we can move on. And everybody gets a little something. Waste management for Sint Maarten and the way forward. I was happy and even somewhat honored that the NRPB and the consultants invited me to have a discussion on the reform of the waste management sector on Sint Maarten, what a waste authority should look like, and how we believe it can be achieved. It's about 42 months now that I have left Vromi, and I took up my seat in Parliament. And I'll say this, within minutes of the discussion, I gotta honestly say, they showed me the respect I deserved for my knowledge and my insight in the garbage issues, the waste management issues of this country. There were people sitting across me and besides me that also had a ton load of knowledge. And the discussion was at a very nice level. We discussed the ins and outs, and I'm not going to go into details on our discussion. I still have some more discussions to go with them, but I want to say this. Because the sector, the ministry lost people like Lewis Brown and Mark Williams, they're in a serious predicament right now. They have no clue really what's happening in the waste management world. They don't. The minister has absolutely no clue. The deputizing or the head of infrastructure management has absolutely no clue. We have people in there that have good intentions. They work hard every day. They want the best for this country. But the waste authority is not something that you learn about overnight. This is not something you do in a course. This is something that you need to understand the industry, the evolution of garbage in Sint Maarten, to understand where you want to go. You need to understand the buy-in of the people. You need to understand what a MRF's role is, what a TDSR's role is, what recycling would mean, what recovery means. Because these are all terms that people use loosely, but don't really understand what it means. And I think in our discussions, we started going into the right direction to understand where we really are. The government doesn't understand the waste authority because it doesn't only cover solid waste, but also liquid waste, sewage. Sewage needs to be part of the waste authority. And the country, the people of this country need to understand that they're going to have to pay for those services. You're going to have to pay for garbage collection and processing. You're going to have to pay for sewage connection on the sewage lines or an environmental fee because you have a septic tank and you're destroying the groundwater. You see the problem with our wells, right? That didn't happen overnight, people. That all our wells are contaminated. But let me be very clear with each other. With shit water, with feces, is because of the uncontrolled growth in a lot of areas where the septic tank cannot hold the amount of apartments or the size of the house connected to the sewage. And because it has open sides, it continues running into the ground. And that means that it contaminates the groundwater. That's how simple it is. And eventually, that groundwater makes itself to the ponds and to the sea. And then we wonder, for example, what happened that the corals are dying off? Or what happens that we got so much of green moss by the certain areas? Well, it happens because this is what sewage creates. I was in the Cayman Islands and I saw so much algae, and then I realized, oops, the turtle farm was there, and they were running the water that they circulate every day with the extract of the turtles in that water, and you had a complete green area because of that. No matter how you treat it, it's going to come down there. So again, what I'm trying to say is you need to understand the project. You need to understand what's really happening all over, not just some places, not just at the landfill or not just at the sewage plant, because that's not the story. That's the technical solution. But you need to understand how it all comes together. And when I worked in Vromi, we put in a lot of time. We had the sewage ready for people to pay. But no minister would sign it because it would cost their party votes. Because, oh God, people got to pay. Oh, we can't do that. From 2010, we were ready with sewage. We got ready with garbage. And everybody was going to pay 25 guilders a month for garbage collection. Listen, we spoke to GB and we said we will come to an agreement that we would put, for example, the sewage fee on the water bill and the garbage fee on the electricity bill. And you're going to say, well, what garbage got to do with electricity? A lot. Because when we did this, we were going to build a waste-to-energy plant and we were going to create alternative energy from the garbage. And using the law in the Netherlands, where alternative energy is a form of energy and you can charge for it on a bill, we were able to do this. And we did this with the law firms that were representing GB. All of these things were done. And today, they walk in here as if we never did nothing. And we got to start from scratch. And all those consultants that they brought in today mean nothing anymore. Because there's a new group there now. Well, at least I met with that group. I fortunately had that opportunity and I took it. And I was very happy that I took it because I was able to share my experiences of 20 plus years in the garbage and sewage business with them, showing them where we made mistakes also, where we learned from mistakes also, where we carbon copied other places to say this can work here, this cannot work here. Because that's the strength, to understand what can work in your country and what cannot work in your country. And that, Madam Prime Minister, is operational experience. That's not a helicopter view. That's not strategic thinking. Because that's what they were doing there in the World Bank. And you see the consequences of the landfill, right? Thank God. Thank God to the boys and women, the men and women in Vromi, who under my watch yet ripped that landfill wide open. And we flushed it with pond water until the fires stopped. We did not follow the World Bank's recommendations to bring in experts to go and pay $15 to $20 million to do that. And thank God in the meeting, there was a gentleman sitting there that says, Van Camp and them did it correctly. Against the World Bank's instructions, because I didn't work for them, I don't listen to them. I work for the government of Sint Maarten, and I'll do what's best for this country. Not what's best for consultants to make a lot of money. And we got it done. And the landfill, listen, there's always going to be operational fires. Every day you can have an operational fire, but you're prepared for that. What you're not prepared for is fires because of what was dumped and it ignited 2 days later. That's what you're not ready for. But we are ready. And when you have people like Schamine, Leah, Janssen, Victor, Byron, all of them, these people work very hard to keep the landfill and the garbage collection going under conditions that it shouldn't really be. All the people that work on top there with their equipment, you have, I think, you have up there, Brisel, Garden Boys, Fleming, you have Corporan, you have CGC, you have, oh God, what's the other gentleman's name? Not Keith Lee, oh, there's another gentleman, I can't pick up his name right now. But those are the people. Those are the people that keep the landfill the way it is right now. Not the World Bank, not the NRPB. They're not paying for it. They can't think that they put a bulldozer there and a compactor there, that they have done anything. Not for 6 years, not for $30+ million. No, you can't say that. The men and women of public works has kept it the way it's going. Not the minister. All he doing is blaming people for what went wrong, instead of just manning up and dealing with the damn thing. But then again, yeah, if you don't have the knowledge, it'll be difficult for you to deal with it. But let's move on, because it's not about them. Also, what became very clear during the meeting was that the projected pathway for the landfills and why things keep going wrong, that became very clear. You know, and no, I have more discussions. I prefer to remain true to the thing. And this is not about me. This is about getting this landfill thing done the right way. But I think that there are a lot of things on the landfill not going the way they should go. The Irma landfill should have been part of the cleanup campaign of the NRPB, the World Bank, and call it that. The trust fund was to clean that up. Over the years, They have started digging up Irma and compacting it now, making it nearly a landfill of record. That happened under your watch, Minister. That happened under your watch. Don't blame Christopher Emmanuel. Blame yourself, or blame the lack of knowledge that you have that allowed this. You have to keep Louis Brown close to you. This would have never happened. But you see, let me not waste my time with you. Hopefully, when we start talking recycling and we start talking about the MRF, that's a material recovery facility, you will realize that when we recover materials for recycling purposes, you can also recover material for incineration purposes. So that plastics that we have, for example, on this island are very, very difficult to recycle because of the different layers that they might carry. But it's a great combustion. It burns great. It gives you a good caloric value, so you get good energy out of burning plastic. And as long as you treat the emissions properly with the right standards, you're good to go. You're good to go. The TDSR that they said they were going to bring 3 years ago, nothing yet. The crushers that they were going to bring to shred tires and all those things, nothing yet. But I can guarantee in the next 4 or 5 months they're going to try to bring them in because it's election time. But 2 years ago we could have crushed it already. They are there, those tires are there for 5 years, if not more. They could have crushed them, they could have ripped them, shred them, and bale the rubber and sell it, because that is fuel. That is incineration fuel. You see, but if you don't understand these things, you can go in no place. You know, when I listened to Van Huffelen's interview, this is what started going through my mind. Okay, where are you going with this lady? Where are you going with renewable energy? Where are you going with GB? Because you already, she stated it. Oh, GB, you know, they're working very hard, but they're burning fossil fuel. And we got to get rid of that. Because climate change, we got to get rid of that. You see, when you put these things together, the next thing they're going to tell us is we don't have anybody that's qualified to do renewable energy. So they have to bring in somebody for that for us. They're going to send us some capacity. Because remember the last time she was here, it was to see what kind of capacity we had. Now, she's here to tell us how we're going to do climate change and what GB's role is going to be and what we're going to do to landfill, etc., etc. Because the waste authority that's being set up by consultants is going to be run by consultants. GB right now has a special representative, but just like the airport, just like Guinea, they're going to get somebody too. Don't worry. It ain't going to be we. It ain't going to be ours. That's the problem. That's what I gathered out of that story. And people say, oh, maybe you're too naive. That's okay. That's okay. I have seen it happen so often that it becomes normal nearly. But I want to tell you all a few things. I want to talk about climate change and the environment. Because when we speak of climate change and our environment, we must understand that there are many other elements that affect such beyond our control. But there are many that we control, and those are the ones we must ensure we take action against. Rising water level isn't something we can stop, but we must ensure we protect our country against it. You're telling me it coming 30 years from now? I don't agree with you. The speed the ice caps are melting with, and those are what we call the irreversible points in climate change. Once the ice cap has melted, you ain't going back up there with no fan to freeze it back. But it also means then that the water has risen. 70% of the world is water, it would have risen with at least a meter plus. Look around St. Maarten and see what would be underwater, or what would be equal to water. A few places. Other countries, like the Bahamas, they would lose half of the islands, if not 3/4 of the islands that they have right now in the Bahamas. They won't exist anymore. Just to give you a little understanding of what this really means. But we gotta understand that we can prepare ourselves for that. We can really prepare. And maybe we should start making the necessary plans for how we're going to do certain things. Coastal protection from high surge and hurricanes can be done. Listen, there are hurricane trainings that I went through. They teach us there are certain things you plant on certain coastlines to protect them. Not everything is protectable, but we can protect it. Sometimes hurricane come, they take all the beach, they go to everything. Behind the airport is a great example. Anytime we have weather out of the west, beach gone. Gone completely. And then slowly but surely, a few weeks later, we have back our beach. No more rocks, we back to beach. So again, there are things we can do. We have spoken about putting underwater sandbanks in a bag so that it doesn't disappear. The sand ain't going to place, the sand remains in the bag. And by doing that, you drop the wave action. The wave action becomes much less and you can protect your coastline. You really can. This is things we have to start looking at and seeing, okay, we are in a kingdom with a country that is, in my opinion, the best in the world when it comes to coastline protection, building dikes, placing dams where dams need to be placed. So again, let's use their knowledge and see what we can do with our country. We don't need to wait until it happens to then start crying. We gotta look at how we can also stop all that sewage water running into our ponds and seas. That's not the fault of anybody but ours. We build recklessly, we don't control what we allow to be built, and then we cry foul afterwards. But it's we are doing this ourselves. So these are things that I believe we can do now. We don't need to wait for when it's gone and everything is over, and then we start to cry and then we ask for a handout to build back our country. Again, we need to understand what's happening in the world, and we need to prepare for that. Now, I know most of the country has no clue what's really happening, and that's understandable. They are trying to figure out how they're going to make another dollar to put bread on their table tomorrow. I understand that, because we have a country with over 70% living below the minimum, below a livable wage. So I understand people have different priorities right now, but it doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't be aware of those problems that we have to prepare for, because we will pay for them. While we didn't create them, we're going to pay for them. Now, but we also creating clutter on this island, environmental clutters, like billboards. I thought they were going to move in on these billboard things, but to the contrary, I seen billboards going up every day. Every day they're going up. All you gotta do is drive go Maho. You'll see them yourself. I now see them advertising them on Facebook for on top of the hill, on top of Colby Hill. They're in the area of Bell. I mean, we can't be serious, man. When is enough enough? That's the question we have to ask. When is enough enough? But again, protection and enhancement of the natural environment is an essential part, though, of the party I am from. These are one of the things that I said we need to review this carefully. We really need to see how we're going to save what we can still save in this island. I believe we have a vibrant vision on this. I believe the population is ready to jump on board and see how can we do this. I truly believe so. And not everybody will share it, but I'm okay with that. You can't please everybody. But again, if we don't take care of our natural environment, then we can't take care of our mental well-being as a society. We can't, because you need the natural environment to remain sane. You need it. And that's our responsibility at a local level. So while I can't stop climate change, I can ensure that the mental well-being of our people as a society can be safeguarded. And we can do that by putting zoning laws in place. We keep talking about them, but until this day, we don't have them in place. We can tackle our groundwater. It is contaminated. Let's fix it. Let's start fixing it by the points of extraction right now. We have wells. Everyday people are pumping from the wells. They use it to wash clothes or they use it for other things. At the end of the day, we know they're contaminated. So maybe we should start creating a simple purifying system besides the wells, so we can do something to ensure that water that is used by us in this community, I won't want to say drinkable at this point in time, but surely not contaminated to the extent it is right now, because it is really, really a very serious problem. Now, there's a lot more that we have to look at when it comes to the climate and our environment. But I'm not going to sit down here and run a manifesto by you. But when we look at the utilities and the renewable energy creation, like I told you, I think we have enough open lands. We have enough rooftops from schools, government buildings, the airport, that we can do solar energy. We can even have people empowered by allowing a program that we can fund with money that the NRPB still in using. Remember I spoke about that entrepreneurial project? Let people borrow $40,000, if that's what it's going to cost per household. Because if you take $40,000, you can put 700 to, am I saying that correct? 40? 1,000. Sorry, you can do close to 6,000 to 7,000 homes with solar. You put solar panels on the roof, and the people pay back the money. They pay back over 10 years. So somebody takes $40,000 a loan, and he pays it back over 10 years. That's $4,000 a year. That's add on 5% interest on that if you so desire. That means that person is going to pay back approximately $350 a month. Half the time, your GB bill is close to that. So it means after 10 years, your solar panels are good for 20, 25 years. After 10 years, you would have paid back the loan. And basically, you don't really have to pay GB 350 anymore, but maybe 100. Then you start to save $250 every month. That's empowering. That is also ensuring that GB crosses over. Now we can also do it where GB takes care of all the solar panels on people's roofs, and that you pay a much lower value for electricity, because the cost of the electricity is much lower now if you offset those panels by GB at 15 years. So instead of paying maybe $350, you pay $200 a month. A savings, again, of $150 starting from day one. So there are ways that you can empower. This is something I have envisioned. This is something I went and I spoke to contractors and businesses on this island that are in this business if they would want to participate in this. Same goes for wind energy. We have turbines that can be brought to this island. Right now it's going to be difficult because there's a waiting list, I understand, for blades on wind turbines. But again, if you do this, you can make this country resilient. You can make this country nearly fossil free. We ain't there yet because we ain't got no cars running on electricity yet. We don't have no cars running on water yet. But the world is coming there. It's just a little expensive yet. And fossil fuel, the technologies are cheaper than those of renewable energy. That's all. That's all it is. And I spoke about it last week that right now, because the interest rates on the market are a little difficult, green programs are finding themselves in a hole to borrow money and move forward. So again, when you look at these things, there is so much you can do. We can even talk to Sabre and see if Sabre, who has geothermal energy, if they, or maybe Dominica, would run a cable to Sint Maarten with electricity. There are so many options when we really want to talk about other energies instead of fossil fuels. And maybe GB can step over to LNG gas for a few years, so refit their engines, and for the next 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, while the country is building its renewable energy farms and home programs, that we use LNG gas to have a cleaner burn and transition to a better energy something. Again, there are so many things I can talk about, the alternative energy and the waste energy. I'm not going to do that today because I don't want to drag the program unnecessarily too long. But I'll tell you this. When we present the Now platform, the Now manifesto, you're going to be able to read these things because I truly believe in them. I think I'm knowledgeable enough to have a discussion with anybody about these things for Sint Maarten. I can't speak for everybody else, can't speak for other countries, but I know what I know what this country needs, and I know how we can get it done. And sometimes country above self goes a long way. Did you know what sharing for elections? This is always one of the pieces I like because you just get to, throw a shot. But clearly, Delta coming. That was a political gimmick. Delta coming, said the Minister of Tiat. And then he apologizes for the erroneous press release on Monday about route expansion plans of Delta Airlines adding flights from Boston to Sint Maarten in 2024. It proved not to be the case. They apologized for any inconvenience. What, you thought people already went by flights and so? Please. Normally when we hear things from this government, we wait for a few weeks to see what's true and what ain't true. And then you read a retraction statement, and they said that the error had been made due to an oversight on their part. So the Delta has no plans to fly. But you see, I don't know. I try to understand. How do you make a mistake like that? You go to a meeting, you discuss with Delta about route expansions, you discuss how good the route has been working for this country, and then you make up the Delta come in? Y'all fellas got to be crazy. And you thought nobody was going to pick up on this? Then this is just going to slow it through? Well, you fellas is the best, man. But okay. It is what it is. Now, this is the one that we're going to ride home today. Our Prime Minister informed the State Secretary Van Huffelen that Sint Maarten doesn't see any room in its country to allow same-sex marriage. I spoke about it in the beginning because it caught my eye. This was reported to the First Chamber in the Netherlands by the State Secretary on the questions of D66 member Dietrich. Now, I spoke about same-sex marriage, marriage equality. Let me rephrase, because that's what they said right away when I said marriage equality. They said same-sex. The two different marriages of same-sex and marriages by law, are both marriages, just like a marriage in the churches. The only legal marriage, though, is the marriage by law. That's the only one in Sint Maarten. I can't talk for other places, but in Sint Maarten, the only marriage recognized by law is the one executed by law, by a magistrate. Now, what caught my attention was that the Prime Minister would make this statement, seeing that our Constitution is in breach with the higher laws of the treaty, the European Human Rights Covenant. That caught my eye. Why would you say this? Sint Maarten is looking at this because we have realized that with the court verdict in appellate that came down in Curaçao in December last year, we find ourselves in a predicament, and we are now looking at how we're going to deal with such. Don't say there is no room. That's not your call, Madam Prime Minister. That's not your call. That's the call of the people of this country. And that dictatorial way of thinking gonna put you in problems legally. Because everybody has a right to make a choice. You made yours. Nobody tell you nothing. Why are you telling others now what their choice must be? Why are you doing that? You don't have that right. You honestly don't have it. And I understand your political move. I understand your political wheel and deal. Because you can't pass it in your party. I understand that. You're afraid to lose church votes. I understand that. But it is not your call to make. Parliament didn't even discuss it. I called your coalition partner because I was baffled. And he said, no, that's impossible. I said, well, let me send you the article, so you can read it when you're in Panama. And complications were silento. Nobody talking. But it's going to come up. I am sure that there are members in Parliament that are going to question this eventually. And I hope they do. You know why? Not because some of us don't respect that behavior or want to accept that behavior means that that behavior is unconstitutional or unlawful. Again, it is not that I am supporting it. It's not that I'm waving the LBTG flag, because that's not the issue here for me. The issue is people have a right to make a choice. And we need to understand. We need to understand that. We cannot sign on to treaties and then say, well, you know what? We can't do that. The treaty gives you an out passage. It gives it to you. Because not all European countries subscribe to same-sex marriage. They don't. They don't. Honestly, they don't. A little homework would have given you the right course of action. But clearly, Madam Prime Minister, that strategic thinking and that helicopter view you speak of, you don't have. So let's move on. Because, like I said, people that didn't listen to Van Huffelen, I need you all to listen now. Van Huffelen came to Sint Maarten with a message for Sint Maarten. Our Prime Minister was waving a big flag and said, oh, we signed an agreement with the Minister of Energy and Climate, Rob Jetten, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And he made money available for renewable energy within the Sustainable Development Goals. It isn't that he just made the money available, made it available within the Sustainable Development Goals. And that's the catch right there. Because what does the Sustainable Development Goals of Sint Maarten say when it comes to renewable energy? What does it say? Madam Prime Minister, come out on Wednesday and explain us what that says. Because I have some more to say on this thing yet. But this is not the time. Right now, I need you all to understand that Van Huffelen also stated GB is not in the best shape right now. So GB doesn't have the money nor the capacity to do renewable energy. But they are more than willing to support it and give us the needed capacity. 5-year contract will do, Madam Prime Minister. They have the strategic thinking. They have the helicopter view on how it should be done. We have enough reports lined up at the NRPB on how it can be done. We wrote enough of them in the Vromi Ministry on how it can be done. But seeing that we are doing a cheer dance, and every time we put a foreigner in the boards and in the positions of power, then we should not be upset when they tell us, we're going to fix your loans, but we're going to use them to do renewable energy, but we're going to put somebody there ourselves that we trust, that we know has the ability and the capacity to do what has to be done. Because that's what's going to happen, Madam Prime Minister, if you like it or not. You have shown your inability to empower your people. There's a list that I have already compiled with over 30 names of people that this government has sacked. Qualified people have been sacked and or denied the opportunity to do something good for this country. And you talk about emancipate your people. I understand your positions. I understand how you feel in your own country. But I will not accept that you destroy the people of this country because of your inability to help them make this a better country. Not because you believe you are doing a lot means you're getting a lot done. You're all prancing and taking pictures, but we have nothing to show. 70+% living in poverty. Elderlies are being shellacked every day yet to get their places restored pre-hurricane. Schools ain't even start to build. Contracts are being peddled off to the highest bidder. And I can go on and on and on. In closing, I hope the Prime Minister sends a text to Van Huffelen and say, Sint Maarten did not discuss the position of same-sex marriage yet in its parliament. I am going to ask them to do so that I can render a position on what the Parliament of Sint Maarten believes Sint Maarten wants. Or I will put it on the ballot when I ask Sint Maarten if they want to be independent, yes or no. I also want to inform the people of Sint Maarten that they're going to continue peddling off more board positions, more infrastructure contracts, like for example the trenches. They're going to try to peddle them off. And I hope the young man stands his ground and fights them to the bitter end. I know the GB CEO position and the other top management positions are going to be given to people that are not our people. But you know what? Come January or before, there'll be an opportunity to correct that. And when you get it, remember this. The empowerment of our people is what the Now Party stands for. And the Now Party will provide the necessary support so that our people can take their rightful place in our country. You know that famous phrase, give a man a fish, he will eat for the day. Teach a man how to fish, and you'll feed him for a lifetime? That's how you empower your people, instead of sidelining them with all kind of nonsense and lies, and then prancing around during Emancipation Day celebrations. This government clearly has no shame box at all. But one thing I know they are very good at. They are failing to plan. And that's why they are planning to fail as a government. And they have done it over and over and over. And there's a time to stop and start over. That time is the next election. Please share my podcast and also like and subscribe to my YouTube page. Have a great week ahead. I'll be out for 2 weeks. I'll be out of the country, so I will not have a podcast next week or the week after, but I will make sure that I have some short videos prepared, and I will have those on air to still entertain you all on Monday mornings when I am doing some people's business, where I'm going to be following some nice courses for Lions International. I'm going to be going to the convention, and I'm going to enjoy being at that convention. It's in Boston, so I'm going to Boston. I'm going to enjoy the convention and hopefully learn a few more things for what we can do as Lions to enhance the lives of the people in this country. Bunks is out. Take care. Have a great day ahead.